Go. Tom, welcome to the Best in Property podcast. I appreciate your time in this interesting period for all, property related as well as, I guess, the whole world, really. How's everything going your side?
It's going fine. I mean, it's tough, clearly. It's tough for us, it's tough for all of us, but it's nowhere near as tough for us as it is for the people clearly who are sick, or the NHS working on the front line. So with all the problems and challenges we have to face, we have to bear that in perspective, and really it's a drop in the ocean compared with what other people are doing.
For sure, yeah. No, it's massive credit and obviously big respect to the NHS and everyone on the front line. I think it's, I think in the property sector, I think, like I said, it's slowed down a lot for everyone. I don't think many people are growing in this time, and I think it's, me personally, it's just the start of the coming months. How has everything been going for Urban Splash, and what sort of have you guys been doing to sort of make sure that you, quite the situation as strong as you can, really?
Yeah, and it is tough. It's tough for everybody in property. So we have about 230 people working here. So the first thing we did was look at safe working. That resulted in us in closing down our modular factory and closing down most of our sites. Mm-hmm. Subsequent to that, we've worked out safe ways of working, and we're in the process of opening those up again now, in a very slow state, but in a safe state. But we still got a majority of people working from home at the moment. And clearly it's not good news. Amazingly, we're still selling houses and apartments, mm-hmm. Which is great to see. We're still winning awards and we're still buying land. But, I'm quite surprised any of that's still happening, but it is happening and business goes on. But clearly it's all going on at a slower rate than it was before.
For sure, definitely. No, I definitely agree. You touched on something then quickly, which was land. You guys looking at land, which I think as a developer in the market, as you know yourself more than anyone, Tom, land has been a big topic in terms of pricing of land and where vendors have got these figures from, or people trading sites, which of course is obviously needed in the market in some manner. But where do you see in terms of that particular topic? I was going to talk about it later on in the podcast, but I think with the market, if we talk, a lot of people are going to be listening who are developers themselves. Where do you see sort of land value is going to be over the next couple of months? Do you expect the prices to drop, or do you think vendors are going to try and hold on for as much value as they can?
So, crisis, I think in Chinese is two figures. One is threat and one is opportunity. Mm-hmm. And this will be the third crisis I've been through. The first was in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a very different crisis, but it was also a threat and opportunity. And what happened there, imagine elsewhere, is there was no demand. And so there were a load of office buildings which people said would never let again. But actually we saw it as an opportunity. And there were a lot of these were what they saw as secondary or tertiary buildings, old Victorian warehouses. Mm-hmm. Now the most in demand, most desirable Victorian warehouses. And we started buying those very cheaply. And turning them into loft apartments and managed workspace. And so with every threat becomes an opportunity. Likewise, the last crisis, global financial crisis in 2008, we worked our way through that one. Big crisis, that was about finance and availability of debt. And again, that allowed us to find new partners to carry on the work we were doing. This one is a new opportunity. And I think, one of the things that will come out of it is I think there will be a much more realistic expectation on land values in many places. I think sadly there will be a number of developers and companies, all sorts of companies, who will fall by the wayside, which is very unfortunate, the loss of jobs. But I think you will see a consolidation, and they will be more difficult to survive. And I think the Times described it as a number of zombie companies in all sectors who've been going, but only just going. And, I think sadly some of those will fall by the wayside. So with land, I think we will see some more realistic pricing. I think we will do more of what Urban Splash has been doing for a long, long time, which is actually working in partnership with landowners. And so the problem is there's so many unknown things, and only more with COVID, that actually trying to say, is your piece of land worth 1 million or 2 million or 3 million today? It's very difficult. It all depends on what we can sell it for. But actually, we like to work with landowners where we say, listen, let's work with the land, let's work together by pushing the value, and actually let's give you a value as a percentage of the profit when we sell it. So we're all working to maximize it rather than being on different sides of the coin. So I think it's changing the market.
For sure. No, you definitely touched on something at the end there. I think vendors are always wanting as much as they can, of course, with land. I think that JV option, that option where they can almost chuck the land in, I guess, in a deal, which, I think for me, because we have two sides of the business, which does develop as well as sort of advise forward funding deals and institutional level stuff. So when we see it, identify a plot of land, the vendors obviously it's always a discussion with the land value and stuff like that. So I think for us, we always make sure that the vendors know that, look, they can get a lot more money for value for the land if they obviously do the JV, which of course, well, it's better in some ways, in many ways for a developer as well. So yeah, I think the vendors are going to have to look at that quite closely if they want to achieve the high value. In recent times, Tom, you've recently obviously signed a deal with Japan's, I believe, biggest house builder. How did that all come about? And I wanted to touch on, obviously, with the market the way it is now, what have the guys been saying, obviously, from your colleagues at the house builder who have obviously you've done the deal with?
So, I mean, we've been developing for the last 30 years or so in Manchester. And typically, we started restoring old buildings, doing a lot of the old warehouses in Northern Quarter and Castlefield, and other parts of Manchester and elsewhere in the UK. And more recently, we've been into modular housing and making houses in factories. And the reason for this is when you look at most of the products we've got in our household, look at televisions, for instance. Look how televisions have changed over the last 100 years. And every time you buy a new television, it's half the price of the last one. It's bigger, it's thinner, it's flatter, it's better. Yeah, it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you look at the houses over the last 100 years, they've actually got more and more expensive and no better and arguably worse. Most of us still prefer buying an old Victorian house than we do a new build. So how can we change that? And our belief was we can change it by using industrial techniques and actually making houses in factories effectively. 2 years ago now, we bought the factory from SIG PLC and started developing ourselves. And we thought we were onto something. But we realized as a fairly small northern company, if we really wanted to expand and scale this up, which we do, we've got a plan to make 3,000 homes a year, we would need some help and we would need some advice and we would need some support and we would need some strong partners. And so we appointed some advisors and we looked around the world for who are the best advisors we can find, who is the best company we can partner with. And we ended up partnering with two institutions. One was Sekisui House from Japan. They've been going since 1960. They've built over 2.5 million homes. And they're the Japan's biggest house builder and the world's biggest builder of modular houses. They own 5 factories, each over 1 million square feet. They employ over 1,000 people in the R&D department. They employ over 3,000 architects in-house. So massive, with a huge amount of experience and advice they can feed in. And then the other people we thought we'd partner with was Homes England, which is part of the UK government. And clearly, that one gives us a stamp of authority because they did a huge amount of due diligence on us. But two, they're clearly connected with local authorities. And we believe that we give local authorities and other public sector partners a degree of security when they know they're partnering with a company which has Homes England as a shareholder. The other thing both institutions shared with us was the same sort of values. The values in great design, the values in sustainability, the values in building greener and greener homes and better places to live, and an emphasis on placemaking. And so as after a worldwide search, we found these two partners and we then did a deal with them, which was exactly a year ago, actually. So since that time has allowed us to grow the business. And we're now looking for sites around the country. So we're currently developing in various guises, of course, in Manchester, particularly around New Islington and Ancoats. In Birmingham, big site, 43 acres in Port Loop, canal site in Birmingham. We've got a site, Smithstock, up in the northeast. We want a site in Cambridge called Northstowe, a site in Milton Keynes, and a site in Windermere. We're working in Plymouth. We're finishing a site in Bristol. So we've got real ambition to be working right around the country.
For sure. No, definitely. I mean, I've had a look, obviously, at some of the stuff that you guys have been doing, especially over the last sort of 18 months. It's been amazing to see. On modular itself, I mean, we've got a question. One of the audience members has written in from a chap called Jake Summers, QS from Faithful and Gold. He mentioned he wanted to essentially ask, into when it comes to modular versus traditional build, is there a certain amount of volume that you need to do for modular in order for it to become more efficient than traditional, or is it a case of sort of from day one it's more efficient, or is there a certain amount, for example, is it 10 homes that you need to build, or you mentioned obviously some of the schemes that you've done are quite a mix of sizes. Is there a certain scheme that has worked better than others?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any magic number, but in fact, once you've got a factory running, the more product you can put through that factory, the more efficient it is and the lower unit cost. Now, you don't go into modular to make cheaper houses or lower cost. It's not a low cost option. What it is a higher quality option. And you've got much better quality control. You're doing things indoors in factory conditions. I mean, just imagine buying a brand new car, and you order your new car, and then one day the gearbox arrives when you drive, the next day 4 doors arrive, the next day the chassis arrives, the next day the engine arrives, the next day the seats arrive and gets assembled in the rain. You'd go apeshit. But actually, that's how we do our houses. And so we believe that by building manufacturing under factory conditions, we can build much higher quality, much smaller tolerances, and keep things under control. At the moment, it's still actually more expensive than building conventionally because the house builders are incredibly efficient with their supply chains. But we believe as we build up the quantum and we put more and more through the factory, then the unit cost will come down. But already we are much better quality, it's a much better finish, and we believe it's more sustainable.
For sure. Well, I'm one of the guys who believes in the future of modular. I think it's I sit on the fence of, like with anything, I think innovation. I think obviously, as we know, things take time, especially in the UK. Modular, like I said, I think it solves so many problems, especially for local authorities. Like I said, you obviously work with Homes England. I think the house building, the house crisis that we're in, I think it solves so many. But why do you think modular has taken a bit longer than expected to come to market to be done in volumes like it is? Because obviously you're one of the sort of key players in the market at the moment with your design, obviously volumes that you're doing. But why do you think a lot of the other big house builders, the other sort of mainstream developers aren't looking at it as much as they probably should do?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think the mainstream house builders have got a very good system. They've been developing over many, many years a supply chain that's super efficient. They are making lots of money. Look at their profit and figures. And all the individuals who run the house builders have fully invested in the existing system. So it ain't broke, so why change? Mm-hmm. A number of other entrants who've come into it who are interested in doing and investing heavily, the likes of LNG and Ilkey and various other people. There is an issue with some of those, and then actually what we're doing in house building is quite complicated. In the first of all, you've got to buy the land. It takes a specific set of skills to come and do that and have the contacts and buy the land. You then got to run a factory. In a way, I'm not saying we're any sort of experts who run a factory and we're learning very rapidly. Running the factory is sort of the easy part, and lots of people can run factories, but that's only sort of a quarter of the whole process. And when you've got a factory, you've actually got to assemble it on site, which again is quite complicated. You have to do the same foundations and site works and utility connections as you do with anybody else. You've got to get planning, which again is complicated. You've got to get funding for it, which is complicated, and then you've got to sell it. And the whole sales process is actually quite complicated. So you need different sorts of sets of skills. And most of the people with those skills are also very heavily invested in the conventional systems. So there's very little reluctance for them to change. So there's a bit of a gap in the market, I think, and companies like Urban Splash are uniquely placed to have those skills at site finding together with the skills of sales. And we're learning very rapidly through acquisition how to run factories, and with the help of Sekisui House in Japan.
Sure, definitely not. I think, like I said, it will take time, but I think we're heading in the right direction for sure. Tom, I want to take you back to sort of earlier on in your journey. I believe from reading sort of online, you started your journey around 29 in the property development space. Was that correct?
Probably even earlier than that. For as long as I can remember, I was doing businesses. But first of all, I was a student. I was selling posters. Mm-hmm. I set up Afflex Arcade, that it's called now, and I think I was just still at university just afterwards, so probably about 22, 23, and just took a head lease onto some space and then sublet the space, and that was sort of my first bit of property.
Mm-hmm. That was it, yeah.
And then, I'd been buying a few terraced houses while in Moss Side and doing those up and renting those out to students. But then probably 29, was trying to think, set up Urban Splash properly in 29, but I'd already done a fair bit of property before I set that up.
For sure. And how was it being, obviously, 29 still, I mean, the property development game probably is at the younger end in terms of where the market is. I think, how was that being a young professional? Did it help, obviously, doing what you did previously with, obviously, doing the head leases and stuff like that with the various property sort of strategies? Was it an industry which you felt it was going to take a few years to get a track record going, or do you think, I can take this on, I believe I can do a better product than what's going on in the market, or is it I need a bit more experience kind of thing?
So I definitely wasn't a young professional, and still not. I'm the least qualified person, and I sort of knew nothing about property. And in some ways, that's a big disadvantage, but in some ways, it's a big advantage. Mm-hmm. And so let me illustrate that. At the time, all the leases on offices were 25-year leases. And I can understand why, or 10-year leases at the smallest was a short lease then. And, I can understand why they were forcing companies to sign such long leases. And I had lots of friends of mine who were entrepreneurs who were setting up in business, but they were thinking week to week, month to month. And so right from early day, which is very common now with WeWork and things, but we were leasing our property on short-term basis, paying rent by the week or by the month, being more interested in what people were selling than in the strength of their covenant or signing long leases. So we had a very different approach. And in some ways, not having all that baggage of understanding about valuation and covenant, terms I didn't even understand or know about, gave me a freedom to operate differently in a way outside the market.
For sure, definitely. I agree. Something which I read also, Tom, was that you set up a radio station and you sold that for an 8-figure sum, I believe. How was setting that up? And was there any lessons that you learned from that radio station that you took into Urban Splash?
Yes, I've done all sorts of different businesses before Urban Splash. I was selling posters, I was selling records, I had a nightclub. I set up a chain of bars called Bar. I ran a radio station. And so they're all different lessons you learn. And every one of those businesses I managed to set up from scratch, to build up and to sell successfully. But what I also learned is they're all sort of slightly distractions, and doing every one becomes difficult. You need to sort out your investors, your board, your MD, your management. And I came to a point, just after Urban Splash, where I realized I was better off concentrating on one thing, property with Urban Splash, and trying to do that, half well if I could, rather than try to do a whole load of different things. But every business was interesting, every business was fun, every business had different challenges. And of course, yes, you learn loads from every one.
For sure, definitely. You were awarded a MBE in 1999. How was that being obviously awarded that? Because it's an amazing thing, and congratulations. How did that affect your career, if it did so? And I guess what was that experience like?
Good question. I'm not sure. Clearly it was lovely to be done. It was a lovely day. I took my mum and dad and my missus to Buckingham Palace to pick it up. And I suppose where it did help us, it's a bit like winning awards, is we were always young, maverick, northern lads who were competing against the big house builders who have been around for years and years and years. And we looked different to them, and we felt different to them, and we acted different to them. But we believe we had some good ideas. And somehow getting an MBE, I suppose, or winning property awards gives you that stamp of approval. And it gives the people who are picking who's going to do the scheme, I suppose, a bit of satisfaction that, everyone's always worried when they pick you for a scheme, what happens if it goes wrong? Mm-hmm. At least if you've done a few other schemes, and you won a few awards, and you've got some recognition, then they wouldn't get the sack if they picked us and we went wrong because other people did as well. So there's a bit of recognition, and clearly it's a lovely thing to happen. I didn't really realise at the time, but I was at quite a young age when I got it. It was quite interesting because when you go to the palace, it's a lovely occasion. Most of the people are actually old grandees who are retiring or just about retired, and there were a number of people there. There was a chairman of HSBC, a couple of property people, and the youngsters were actually all either from the military or the police or sports people. So Tony Adams from Arsenal got his the same day as me. So I was lucky enough to hang around with all the sports guys who are my sort of age.
I bet that was an experience, wasn't it?
It was a lovely experience.
Good man. No, well, again, congratulations that, because it's, I guess, something you mentioned. Also, when it comes to that sort of doing a bid on a scheme and a proposal, it's you've got obviously two parties, you with an MBE or obviously another party. It's sort of hard to, well, it's quite easy to make that choice, I guess, with who's the best person for the job, really. So property is, Tom, you'll know more than anyone, it's an interesting journey. I think obviously with what's going on right now, I think in itself, development is not an easy game in many ways. There's obviously many pieces of pie that can fall out of bed at any point, really, which could obviously have an effect on a project. Was there any times in your journey which you felt like, well, you question things? And I think a lot of people in property, because you are waiting for the finance, you're waiting for the land deal to go ahead, or you're waiting for the sales to go through. Is there any sort of points or any schemes that you thought, hang on, so what's going on here? Do I need to question things? Do I need to change strategy? Or is it a case of you believed so much in what you did that you just carried on through with it?
Again, very good question, Jake, and probably both on most of the schemes. So every scheme has had its problems, and I can talk for hours and hours about all the mistakes we've made and the difficulties we've done, and almost when you look back at every scheme, the things you do differently. But I think what's really important is the self-confidence and the determination that what you're doing is right. And we've fundamentally believed in good design. We fundamentally believe that if you do the right thing and you have great design buildings, people will come. And if you build it right, people will come. We've got a real determination. For all the knockbacks we've had lots of knockbacks. We've actually just fought our way through those. And this COVID-19 is another knockback, and we have to fight our way through this. I suppose the hardest time was the global financial crisis. Before then, we'd started Urban Splash in 1993 with nothing. We've built it up over 15 years, and built it into one of the most well-respected property companies. In 2007, it was worth 100 million from scratch. And then 3 years later, it was worth minus 100 million. And, the world had fallen apart around us. We had over 300 million of debt. And it was a real struggle. And we had to have solicitors in most Monday mornings working out whether we're still a going concern or not. We had to lay off. We had over 300 people working. 250 of those we had to lay off and make redundant. So, very difficult, very sad times. But we worked our way through it, and we ended up paying everybody we owed money to. We ended up settling amicably with all our banks that we owed money to, and we got out of it fighting, and doing new and better schemes. And so, some people, when they ask me what the secret of life is, some people think it's about inspiration and being very bright and very intelligent. That's obviously important. But I meet loads of people in my life which are far brighter than I'll ever be. But actually, inspiration and ideas are execution are just daydreams. Some people think it's all about hard work and perspiration, but actually hard work is necessary but not sufficient. So everybody I've ever met who's been successful, be they entrepreneurs or property developers or solicitors or art dealers or accountants or footballers or artists, have all had one thing in common: they all work hard. But it's not sufficient. The hardest working people in our industry are probably labourers, digging holes in the ground. They work harder than anybody else, but they're not necessarily the most important. So the most important thing, I think, is that determination, to have a good idea, to have a vision, and then see it through to the end. And I think it's that perseverance and the determination which really sorts out the successful from the less successful.
For sure, definitely. I think, like you said, ideas are worth nothing unless they're executed on. I think definitely, especially in property, everyone has these grand plans. They're going to raise this amount of capital. They're going to take over the build-to-rent market. I think until you actually build it and you start generating the income, and you've delivered a product, you've paid the people, then up until that point, it's just all talk, really, isn't it? So, no, I appreciate that. In terms of when it comes to linking back with the difficult times, I think building an internal team is, I guess, very important with any business. But if you were to say, I guess, when it comes to, if I was a developer and I was looking to hire 5 or 6 professionals, whether that be an in-house QS, an architect, or a lawyer, linking back to obviously the difficult times you've had, what professionals in your team has allowed you to get through those times? Is it teams, is it the design team, for example? Because I guess there's obviously the role in each situation. Is it a finance director? What sort of advice would you give on that?
So, again, we have an incredibly complicated business we're doing. It needs all sorts of people. So, we've got, a core team of 5 co-shareholders with me. 1 John is an architect, 1 Julian's accountant, 2 Nathan and Simon are surveyors. So you need a mix of different skills. The advice I would give is think about what you're good at. But more importantly, think about what you're not good at, and hire people to take those skills that you are less skilled at, that you're not good at, where you've got weaknesses, which in my case is easy because I've got weaknesses in all sorts of different areas. And then the most important thing is to hire people who are better than you. Hire the cleverest, brightest people you can find. And a lot of people are scared of hiring people clever and better than them because, I don't know why, they feel intimidated or they feel they're going to be shown up. But actually, hopefully I've always been good. And again, it's not that difficult in my case of hiring people who are brighter and better than me. Mm-hmm. The problem with that, of course, how do you pay them? And particularly as a startup, you may not necessarily have the money to pay as much as the big companies have. And so invariably, if you can't afford to pay them in cash, you have to pay them either in bonuses or in equity or some way, but actually take them along on a journey with you. The other advice, so always hire people who are better, clever than you. And then always hire people that you really like and respect. Hire people that you want to go on a long distance train journey with, you're not going to get bored by. Hire people you like, who are amusing to be with, who you trust, who are honourable, who you will spend many, many years with. And for me, it's all about talent and intelligence and aspiration and optimism, much more important than skills and experience. And actually, bright people can learn to do different jobs and are much less worried about the experience or the qualifications. than I am about the aptitude, the optimism, the enthusiasm, the ability to want to work hard and get something done.
For sure. I think definitely I found it, and you'll know it dealing with professionals, whether that be a QS or a design team or doing highways, whoever it is. I think when you get into property to get to a level, you have to, of course, have to be qualified. But I think the people that I enjoy working with, the people that are emotionally intelligent, they understand how to get things done. They understand what you are as a business, where you're heading. I think most people that study, go to university, they do come out with the grades that they need to obviously live with, get a job in become a surveyor. But I think it's like you said, those people that you enjoy working with, who can understand when it does come out. Because property is it's constant problem solving. It's never an easy day. If there's not problems, I guess it's not really property development, is it? It's a constant. And that team, that until team. I mean, you touched on as well with, I guess, there's a lot of people obviously that are going to be listening to this who want to get into property development, for example. You mentioned obviously giving people equity, giving people bonuses. Would you say that's the best option for people? Because obviously normally as a developer, obviously, of course, you can get shareholders in. You can obviously give equity to a professional, for example, or you can just pay them as a standard professional like you normally would. Would you rather, if you were to sort of set back up in sort of however long ago you set up in, would you do the equity route again? Or would you sort of try and do as much as you can on your own?
Well, listen, if you own a business, you never want to give equity away. Yeah? You want to keep all the equity you can, as much as yourself. So it's about, two big times given equity away. It's not giving equity away. People have earned it. One is when starting up, when the business was worth nothing. And secondly was on a global financial crisis when it's worth nothing. So the only time you can really afford to give equity away is when the business is worth nothing. We have got other sort of growth share schemes and bonus schemes which replicate equity for other people and most of the staff. There's no right or wrong answers with this, Jake. You've got to do what's right for individuals, and you've got to work out what makes people tick. But what you want to do, or what I want to do, is make everybody act in Urban Splash like they own a bit of the company in a very real sense they do. And if we're successful, everybody gets bonuses, everybody gets a share of it. We've got big bonus schemes that pay out when we hit certain targets, so that everybody, from the receptionist to the directors, get. And so it's about giving people the same interests that I've got, and sharing the work, but also then sharing the rewards. So there's no right and wrong ways of doing that, and it depends what's available to you. And clearly, everybody's employee wants everything. They want great bonuses, they want great salaries, they want loads of equity, and you just got to do a deal-by-deal basis.
For sure. I mean, as Urban Splash, as a developer, you guys focus on regeneration quite a lot. Amazing to see, obviously, how you guys, and so the projects you guys done. So it's obviously excited to have you on today. You mentioned, obviously, in a lot of your articles, you try and create demand through regeneration. Talk to us about that. Where does that come from? Is that design-led, or is that just sort of the vision that you have in terms of, if you see an area that you like, you think obviously that's going to grow in the next 5-10 years, or is it you believe that your design's going to do that just in itself?
So, it's interesting. When I came to Manchester in 1983, I think a couple of hundred people lived in the city centre. Nobody wanted to be in the city centre. The shutters came down. When we first started converting the old warehouses, people made out we were almost evil. Why are you forcing people to live in a polluted city centre? No one wants to live there. You could not buy a loaf of bread or a pint of milk in the city centre. It's unbelievable now to think about that. But we believed it was right. And we went with our gut feel, our belief, these amazing buildings with high ceilings, big windows, people would want to live in there. Then the Northern Quarter, for instance, that used to be called the shitty part of Manchester behind Oldham Street. And we came up working with the council about a concept, a vision, an idea to develop it into a new area of Manchester, full of independent retailers, full of people living there, full of cafes and bars. And we actually articulated that area, and we started executing it. We did Smithfield Buildings, a big first scheme on there. Likewise with New Islington, for instance, we worked out that was a really crappy, undesirable council estate called the Cardroom Estate. We worked there with the local population, with the city council. We built New Islington Marina. We built a new park called the Cottonfield Park. We built a lot of apartments like Chips, and houses like Townhouse. We're building mansion houses there now out of CLT. We put a marina in there. We put houseboats in there. We have encouraged lots of independent retailers to come there. Holland's there now, Cask, and it's one of the best areas to live in Manchester. So it's about using great designs. It's about focusing on what would we want as individuals if we live there? How can we make the best place possible? How can we do everything we can through design, through placemaking, to do the absolute best to squeeze out every ounce of potential in every building, every site we can? to make great places to live, work and play.
For sure, definitely. Talking on that, I mean, we've had another question from the audience. A chat from Kurt Property Investments, Dylan Lupos. He wanted to understand your philosophy really around building relationships. I mean, you mentioned obviously when you're doing, of course, a regeneration project, council needs to be bought into the idea and obviously the vision. How do you sort of conduct yourself with obviously partners and colleagues like that? And what would your sort of advice be on people wanting to build relationships with that? Because I guess, like I said, they are projects, and I think a relationship definitely is needed for sure.
Great question there from Dylan. I mean, I think the most simple advice is to treat everybody else like you want to be treated. And as a good advice in life anyway, and, you know, an act to make your mum or your grandmum proud is the other way of doing it. So, you know, what we do, first of all, is we have a meeting with everybody and we get everybody's wishes on the table. Yeah, and everybody has got an interest in this, and a legitimate interest. The council will want to see regeneration and council tax. The local community want to see facilities there improved. The builder want to make want to make a profit. The architect will want to make their life's monument to win awards with your money. You know, and everyone's got a different view of it, and that's all fine. Now, you can't give everybody everything they want, but understanding what everybody wants, putting that all on the table, and then getting as much you can of everybody, and everybody recognizing that we as developers need to make a profit, we need to make delivery, and we all have to work together to, again, squeeze out every ounce of potential in every site. And so when you're dealing with partners, you're very honest with them. You're very honest with what you can't do as well as what you can do. You're very straightforward with them. And, you know, sometimes that means a quick no, but a quick no is much better than meandering yes. You get the difficult issues straight on the table. You face them with what you can do and what you can't do. And you talk to them and you ask them what they want out of the project, and you work together. And there is nothing more rewarding for me than actually starting with a crappy burnt out building or a crappy derelict site and working together with a team, typically including local authorities, including builders, including architects, loads of other professionals, and you turn that bit of eyesore into a beautiful building that's great to live and work in. There's a huge sense of satisfaction, and we only get there by working together. And when people start working apart and fighting each other, the whole thing invariably disintegrates. So it's about keeping that team effort, keeping the vision, agreeing the vision at the beginning, keeping that going, and making sure everybody's supporting each other and working with each other.
For sure. I always say the team effort is massive. And I think there's a lot of money you can make in property, but there's also a lot of money you can lose. And I guess if you don't have that team from day one, everyone's not bought in, then, well, you're not losing a couple of grand here and there. It's, I guess, with the size of projects which yourselves and many other developers get involved in, it's not a great situation to be in. In terms, obviously, I mean, with the property and the construction market in itself, construction contractors have been going out of business especially over the last 12, 18 months. Where is it? I mean, where do you sit from your personal sort of opinion on the construction market and with the contractors in place? And what do you feel they need to do to, well, reduce this risk? Are there too many? Because I've spoken to a lot of contractors who have gone from being your typical house builder all the way up to building a city centre apartment, 25, 30 stories. Is there a key problem that you see them doing key practice and they're doing, or is it a case that they need to completely change strategy and get back to what they know kind of thing?
So I think there's a few things to say. The first thing is our business is a cyclical business, yeah. And anybody who's my age or older will know we go up and we go down and we go up and we go down, and that's why it's so important to make those relationships with people, because you need to be with them as you're going down as well as going up. When we're going up, everyone's making money, yeah, whether they're good or bad. You know, money. When we're going down, everybody's losing money. Yeah, again, even the good people will lose money. And so it's important for the relationships. We have another big structural problem, I think, with our industry, the way it's actually structured with fixed price contracts, with contractors working, at least superficially, on very, very thin margins, and not being enough money for them, not being enough margins for them to actually make a proper business. So sadly, many of them rely or have relied historically on claims, you know, and sadly, when you get on site, sometimes the best paid people are on day one on site are the claims surveyors, looking at where the problems are and buying contracts, knowing there will be changes and claims coming forward. So, you know, we have got some big problems. The very fact that you have got an architect designing something, a QSN costing it, and the builder then building it. And sometimes the builder will be thinking, so that's a crazy way of building something, but I've been asked to cost it, so I will. And actually getting the teamwork together, the earlier stage, so forming ways of actually working in partnership where the builder is talking to the developer and talking to the architect at the very early stages is a much more efficient way. In many countries, there's no such thing as a QS actually, and the builders and the architects work a lot closely together. And I'm not saying that's the only way of working. So what do? We tend to work in partnership much more with contractors. We have got our own construction side, so we project manage things ourselves sometimes. When we work with contractors, we like to do design and build with them. We like to, work with medium-sized contractors rather than necessarily the biggest or the smallest. We often work with private companies where we find we've got something in common to get on with them. And of course, by doing the MMC and the modular, we're then keeping control of at least 2/3 of the expense and being able to get the exact costings of that to give us real cost certainty, knowing this going through our old factory. The biggest thing of all, though, I think, is to talk to everybody else and again, work in partnership and to try to avoid adversarial relationships and to find relationships where you can work in true partnership.
For sure, definitely. No, I completely agree. I think Manchester, Manchester more than anyone, Tom. I think it's amazing for me to grow up in the city and obviously the surrounding areas. I think it's an amazing place to be. What has Manchester done for you over the last sort of 20, 30 years, and what sort of things do you want to leave behind in Manchester in terms of whether a cheesy legacy almost? What sort of stuff can you give back to Manchester? Because I'm sure it's helped you a lot in many ways for the growth of your business.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester's been an amazing city and Manchester's been great to Urban Splash. And to me personally, I live here and I work here and I love the city. And, the first thing I think is see the changes that have been made in the city in my lifetime since, moving here when I was 19. And it's been a total transformation and it's been amazing. I think Urban Splash can proudly say we played a small part in that, in creating areas like Castlefield, like Northern Quarter, like New Islington and Ancoats. We were the first people to come in Ancoats and develop the first mills. We've spearheaded the regeneration of New Islington. We played a pivotal part in Castlefield. I think outside of that, play all sorts of roles. I'm often in the town hall helping them. I was the first chair of Ancoats Urban Village to spearhead that regeneration. Currently, I'm chair of Manchester International Festival, which is an amazing arts festival. We're building a factory new art centre, £130 million art centre designed by OMA Architects. It's going to be amazing. We're on site with that. Very proud of the role I've played in that and various other cultural institutions in Manchester. Chaired the Arts Council a number of years. But in various different ways, hopefully I've played a part supporting and advising the mayors and the leaders. And there's more, I'm sure, to be done. And I've got more thoughts and ideas of what needs doing to Manchester going forward.
For sure, definitely. Yeah, Manchester, I think it's, amazing to see, especially if you look around European cities. And I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time in sort of Southeast Asia and Singapore and places of the world. It's still got a long way to go, Manchester, but you start to see now it's becoming sort of powerhouse in its own right. I mean, in terms of, obviously, you're a chap that loves, obviously, design and arts and, obviously, architecture. In terms of a place that you've visited around the world, Tom, if you could have any sort of type of design, whether it be, you've seen the design type from Denmark, for example, or wherever it is in the world, what's your favourite country that offers the best quality of design?
Well, I wouldn't say there's any one favourite country. As in New York, it's amazing, inspiring to go into New York and see both the towers there, but also to see the High Line and see Soho, New York. I love Venice. An interesting about Venice, like a lot of areas that I love actually, is the old medieval quarters of towns, is they were built without cars. And actually they're built for pedestrians and horses, actually. And they're much better places for it. And, when you walk around Manchester now with COVID going on, you see many less cars in Manchester. It's a much better place without the cars, I believe. And, every time we build a new place, you're designing things around dust carts, reversing around corners. And I think, one of the hopefully positive outcomes of COVID is rethinking some of those parameters of design and thinking about designing places for people. Another thing that's actually really struck me is everyone's been shouting out on Twitter and social media how great the Urban Splash projects are, because they've all got, or virtually they've got gardens, they've got balconies, they've got communal gardens. We're putting parks in areas like New Islington and Port Loop, actually having that green space and how important green space is. And then our homes tend to be much bigger than the average. And so having space to work, when you're working at home or whatever else, having high ceilings, having big windows. All these elements, I think, have really come into themselves. And they're the things that I like about visiting other places. So there's not one place or another place, but it's about people who focus on places, on placemaking, on individuals, and create beautiful places. And the other examples are Amsterdam's got some great design, Denmark's got some great design. But, every town, every city, the things you can find that you love. So it's about, finding out what's good and bad rather than one place being right and one place being wrong.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, in terms of like an average working week, one of the personal questions that I wanted to find out myself was, someone in your position, Tom, what does an average week look like for you? Is it a case, you touched on early on about working hard, but I guess anyone in your position, anyone that wants to achieve any success, that's just the basic principle really. But what does an average week look like for you? Do you tend to get up in the morning? Do you work later till night? How does that structure-wise?
So, get up early. Well, I would consider relatively early. I'm usually in the office for 8 to 8:30. When I'm in the office, I often work quite long days, to about 6 or 7, although I wouldn't necessarily encourage that to people. I spend a fair bit of time traveling and, getting with technology now. I actually work every day of the year, well, every weekday of the year anyway, that I'm there, wherever I am. But when I'm in the office, I work a long day. When I'm away, I'll tend to work the mornings, get up early before anybody else, do my emails from the previous day, sort out some calls, sort out some conferences, and then often finish for lunch. I like skiing, I like traveling, I like going places. Clearly all that's been stopped now. I love going and visiting our sites. So I try, they're my favorite days, going on site visits, seeing the construction going on, meeting the guys on site, seeing the developments coming on. I love doing the design meetings, but I'm very lucky that, I've got so many great people working at Urban Splash. Everything we have to do, somebody else is taking day-to-day control of it. So effectively I have a blank piece of paper every morning on my desk. Well, that's my aim anyway. So there's nothing I have to do, but things I want to do. A lot of my time is still spent building relationships with our partners. A lot of time still I'm looking for new land, new opportunities, new sites, talking to our land team, talking to colleagues. And I suppose my key job, I always think, is to make Urban Splash the best place to work if you're interested in urban regeneration. And so that's my sort of key role, to attract talent, because if you've got great people working for you, everything else is easy. So I'm trying to make sure that, 1, we're doing the most exciting projects, 2, we've got the great people working with them, and 3, we celebrate those successes and the people working at Urban Splash enjoy their job and have a bit of fun.
For sure. Definitely, I think having the great people in the team, allow them to, I guess, become the best version of themselves. I think it'll allow you to, as a business, grow and achieve what you want to achieve as well. Tom, as a tradition, we're going to sort of round it up. I appreciate, obviously, all the questions that you answered today. If you were to have one coffee for the rest of your life and one quote that you'd live by, you used to tell your staff, tell your partners or colleagues, what would those 2 things be?
Well, the coffee, I think, would be a very nice dry white wine from the Burgundy district in France on ice, with the sun shining and some friends. And the quote that is my favorite quote that I always finish on is a quote from the ancient Athenians. And when he became a citizen of Athens, you had to swear this quote. And the quote was, "We will leave this city not less, but better, greater, and more beautiful than we found it." And that, I think, is a really sound quote and something that's really, really important. And I think all too often in the property industry, we're worrying in the private sector about net to gross, about yield, about return, about making a profit. In the public sector, they're worried about delivery, about unit numbers. And we forget too often we're not producing units, we're producing homes, we're producing workplaces, we're producing buildings that are going to affect people's lives, and we're producing places that will change our cities forever. And actually focusing on making our cities a bit better, a bit more beautiful, and great places to live, work and play is something I think is really important, and really proud of the role Urban Splash has done in that over the last 30 years or so.
Amazing. Love that quote. I think for the bigger picture, I think it's, especially with what you guys do and preach at Urban Splash, I think, it hits the nail on the head. So, Tom, really appreciate your time. I know obviously you've got a busy day ahead, but yeah, anything you need from my side, give us a shout, and looking forward to hearing it.
Brilliant, Jake. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conversation.
Cheers. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.